This is a cricket game made entirely in Rive without any code, from the design to animations and the game mechanics right within the editor. In this one, we'll perform a quick breakdown of how the same is made in Rive. Now, instead of jumping straight into this, that is the state machine, we will take it step by step. First, we will look at how the assets are prepared. Next, we'll preview the animation timelines to be used in the state machine. And then we will learn how to set up the game mechanics in the state machine. And finally, we will fix some of the issues with our approach and some general tips and tricks. Let's get started with preparing the assets. For a cricket game, the bare minimum we need is a ground to play on, a pitch, and the two players. I made everything in Rive, and for the characters, I have used reference images and stock sites. Now, why did I use the coffee cup and the can as players? Well, just don't ask that. Moving on, once we've got all the assets in the outboard, we can start preparing them for animation. Like for the characters, we need to rig them with bones. Now, it's not necessary to rig every part of the character, just ones that will be used in the animation ahead. So, first, you should think about the animations you'll be creating, and depending upon that, add bones and controls. Like here, I have added a face control, which kind of isn't necessary, but have added that for fun. Now, it's a good idea to add IK constraints for the limbs for easy control and animation. Now, except for rigging, the hierarchy of the elements is also important for animation, that is, wrapping elements in groups for different constraints or animations. Let me show you what I mean. So here I want to create a up and down camera animation, and to simulate that I can animate the position and scale of the elements. For easy control, I'll have the animation hooked with a joystick. Now instead of setting keyframes on the objects itself, I'll wrap each element with another group and name it appropriately, like C control, that is our camera control. Then I can set the keyframes on the dedicated groups which I just created, and this will allow me to avoid any conflicts and freely move the elements inside the wrapper without affecting any related animations. Same goes for the bat or the ball. That is, I can wrap the bat in a target like this and name it, let's say, bat control, and use the same for the swing animations. Later, if I want, I can change the scale of the bat even after animations are created. Similarly, for the ball, I have a control target, but I've added another group on which I'll apply the rotation keyframes so that I can have different layers with translation and rotation animations. So that's mostly about preparing the assets. Now let's preview the animations, and for that, we need to plan a bit about how the game will work. Because based on that, we will be creating the timeline animations. Bare minimum, we need the bowler to bowl and have the batsman swing the bat on the user input. And if the timing is right, the batter gets the hit or on miss gets bowled. Now let's look at it in an animation perspective. So first of all, we need the bowler to bowl, so that will be a timeline, and then we need the batsman to swing the bat as well, and that will be another timeline. Now, how do we know if the batsman swung the bat at the right time? That is, did the bat struck the ball? For the same, we need to know when the ball is in the range of the batsman. If it's not, then there's no hit, but if it does fall in the range, then we know there is a hit. Now, that's fine, but how do we know if the ball is in this imaginary range? Well, for that, we can use Rive events, and that's what's going to drive our game mechanism. I can have the ball come from the bowler and go all the way up to the wickets. Now we can imagine a range of the batsman, and in the animation timeline, when the ball enters and leaves this range, we can report an event and in turn listen for the same in the state machine so that we know it's a hit and the batsman struck the ball. So if we have a bat swing trigger while the ball is in the range, we get a hit. Else the ball carries on and hits the wickets. Now that we've got a basic understanding of the mechanism, let's preview the animations. Let's start with the bowling animations. That is this one right here. I have the character take up some action, throw the ball, and the ball goes all the way and hits the wickets. So that's our animation. Now, for the game to work, we need to report events when the ball is in the range and not in the range of the batsman. So let's say if there is a bat swing at this moment, there won't be any hit, but if there is a bad swing at this moment, there will be a hit because it is in the range. And now to help us with the range and the same, I have created these guides. So I have the range further divided into three groups. So we have a early hit zone, so the bat is swung early. Then we have a good hit, and then we have a perfect hit, which will result in a sixer. So that's the range of our batsman. Now we can go ahead and create the event objects which we will report. So let's select the event tool and create one. And I'll create event for each of these. Now, except for these three events, we need another event that will be when the ball is not in the range. Now, when we start, it's not in the range, but when it passes the range as well, we need to report that as well. That is, after it passes the perfect hit zone, it's in the no hit zone. So we have to create a event for the same as well. So I can simply create a event, let's say no hit. And finally, we can add another event when the batsman is bowled. That is, the ball hits the wickets if it reaches the point. Now let's go ahead and report these events according to the position of the ball in the timeline. So I can go ahead and scrub through the same. And right at this moment, we will get an early hit if there's a swing. Moving on. At this point, we'll have a good hit. And finally, we can have a perfect hit. And after it passes this perfect hit zone, I can signal the no hit event like this. Now I can also report this at the start to mark we don't have any hit. That is all this area. But I will do that in a separate timeline, which we will see in a moment. So we'll go ahead and listen for these events in the state machine and determine do we have a hit or what type of hit we have. Now, it won't be fun if we only have one animation for the bowling action. And that's why I have created different variations. That is, we have a slow ball, we have a spinning ball, and we have a fast ball as well. So we have some variation in the game. And yes, I have to go ahead and report the events in each one of them as well, like I did with the normal animation. Now, there is another thing we need to take a look at, that is at the start, the bowler takes a step ahead for the bowling action. So when it goes ahead and the batsman hits the ball, let's say it hits it somewhere here, then there will be another ball. And that's why the bowler should return to its original place and be ready for another ball. That would be this state right here. But at the end, you can see that's not the case. And that's why I have this bowler return timeline or animation that just makes the character go back a step and also have him the ball. It does reappear magically, but that's what we're going with here. Not going to have him fetch the ball because that will take a lot of time. So that's the bowler return to reset for another ball. And that's the bowler side of things. Now let's take a look at the batsman. That is, as I mentioned, we'll have the bat swing and the ball actually going from the bat to a different location as separate timelines. So here we have the bat swing, and then I have created different variations in the hits as well. So we have three different ranges. So we have an early hit, good hit, and a perfect hit. In the early hit, the ball won't go too far. And you can see here, I'm not actually animating the cup character or the ball or the bat. I'm just animating the ball's movement. So we can play them in different layers in the state machine. So that's one thing you should take a note of. So another variation for the same, and the same goes for the other range hit. So we have a good hit, one, two, and three. And for the perfect hit, we will have a sixer. That would be like this. And here we have a camera movement as well. That is the field camera, as I mentioned before. And that is simply a timeline as well, where we are changing the position and the scale of the objects. And lastly, I have also added a celebration for our bowler as well when they get a wicket. Now that we have overviewed most of the animation timelines, we can go ahead and build the game mechanism in the state machine. And we'll do that from scratch. That is, I will go ahead and create a new state machine and start from here. Now, instead of jumping right into the complex stuff, we can start with the small stuff and build upon that. And here, the most basic thing we can do is have the bat swing animation. That is this one right here, connected to a trigger input. So we can trigger it at any point. So I will go ahead and add a trigger input, name it bat swing, and drag and drop the bat swing animation timeline into the state machine layer and connect the entry state with the same. And the condition for the transition will be our trigger input. Now, if I go ahead and play the state machine, and if I trigger the input, you can see we get a bat swing. Now we want this to happen every time we trigger the input. And for that, we need a default state. That is, we will be by default in the default state. And when there is a trigger, we'll play this animation and go back to the default state. Now, instead of creating a new timeline with the default position keyframes and the rotation, we can go ahead and simply create a empty timeline. That is, I'll create a new timeline, name it empty, and it can have the duration of a single frame, and then I can use it as the default state. So I can go ahead and drag and drop that into the state machine layer, remove this transition, go to the empty state, and then we can set up a condition. That is, if there is a trigger, we will play this bat swing animation and go back to the empty state after the whole animation is played, which can be done using the exit time and setting it to 100%. Now we can go ahead and test the same. That is, I can start the state machine, trigger the input, and you can see for every time we trigger the input, we get the bat swing. Now let's go ahead and configure the bowler side of things. And in this layer, we have configured the bat swing. So let's go ahead and create a new layer. I'll name this one bat, and then create a new layer and name that one as the main layer, because here we will set up the bowling, the bat hitting the ball, and so on. Let's place this before the bat one. And to get started, we can just play the bowling animation. That is one of these animations, the bowl normal. Let's drag and drop that in here and transition into the same without any conditions. Now I can go ahead and play the same. We have the ball coming, bat swinging, but we didn't get any hit. Now, it's a topic of later whether or not the bat hit the ball, but right now we are only animating the ball moving away from the bowler up to the wickets and the bat swinging like this. But we're not animating the ball away from the batsman to other part of the ground. And for that, we can use these animations, which we have overviewed. That is early hit, good hit, and inside of perfect hits. And we'll determine what kind of hit we have in just a bit. But for now, we can use just a normal good hit for demonstration and then transition into the same whenever we have a bat swing. That is a possible hit. So I can go ahead and transition into the same from the any state, and the condition will be the bat swing trigger, which we have created earlier. Now, if I go ahead and play the state machine, trigger the input, you can see we kind of get a bat swing and the ball hitting as well. Now we had a jump in between, and that's because right now it's just gonna hit the ball even if the ball is not in the range. That is, I start the state machine, swing it, and you can see the ball instantly jumped towards the batsman and just got hit. Now we need to configure or set up a mechanism to detect whether or not the ball is in the range, and if it's in the range, what kind of hit we should do. That is a early swing, a good hit, or a perfect hit. Let's go ahead and set that up. Now, inside the bowling animations, we have the event reports, that is these ones right here. And we can go ahead and listen to the same in the state machine and determine what kind of hit we have, or whether or not even if we have a hit. So we can listen to these events and store that data or the hit as a number input. So I can create a number input inside the state machine, and let's name it hit. And then on a event, let's say on the early hit, let's listen the same. So the target would be output when we want to listen for events inside the same. And I can name it as early hit event. And for the action, we can set this input to a value. So let's say when we have no hit, the value will be 0, early hit would be 1, good hit will be 2, perfect hit will be 3. So for our early hit event listener, we can set 1, and actually the event will be early hit as well. Similarly, I'll go ahead and set up the listener for each event. I've gone ahead and set up event listeners for each of the head events and set the number input accordingly as well. Now we can use the same in our state machine as condition. That is, now we can determine if we have a early hit or a good hit. And based on that, we can play the respective animation. So let's do just that. I'll bring in the different kind of animations. And for each kind of animation, I have some variations as well, just like the bowling ones, and we'll handle this variation and randomization thing later on. For now, let's take one from each. So we have a early hit, a good hit, and a perfect hit, like this. And instead of going to each one from the any state, because all of them will share this bat swing trigger. So on the bat swing, we will have a hit. So I can use the empty state as the join here. That would be a tip. So let's bring in the empty state, and I can transition into that if we have a bat swing, which will not play any animation, but we'll use that as a link inside our state machine. And from this, I can go to each kind of hit based on the hit number input. So for the early hit, it will be 1. For the good hit, it will be 2. And for the perfect hit, it will be 3. Now I can go ahead and test the same. That is, I can go ahead and start the state machine. And you should notice the number input right here, how it changes based on the ball position. You can see it quickly run through from 0, 1 to 3 and back to 0, because there is a no hit zone between the batsman and the wicket as well. So now let's try to get a hit in. So let's restart the state machine. And now I will bat swing, and we have got a sixer. Cool. Now that the hit mechanism is set up, let's go ahead and add some variation to our animations. That is, it is visible that we have the same animation playing one after the other. So let's go ahead and add variation to these animations. That is the heading animations and the bowling with the randomization feature in Rive. So let's start with the bowling one. I can go ahead and bring in all of the different type of bowling we have. like this and transition into the same. Let's bring the normal one as well. So from the entry state, I will create an empty for joining and go to each one of them, that is create a transition link. The condition would be nothing, but the exit will be randomized. That is, I can select this empty state, scroll down, and tick this right here. That is, randomize the exit. And you can see we have options to set the weight of each one as well. So I can go ahead and let's say have the normal animation be more frequent than the others. But for now, it's fine. We can just keep them have the same probability of appearing. And for the hits, I'll go ahead and perform the same. That is, I will go ahead and create empty states. So the condition is set up right here. So I can just create all of them empty and bring in all of the hitting animations. And for the hit empty timelines as well, I will randomize the exit. For the perfect hit, we only have one, so that's fine right here. Now I can go ahead and add in this transition back, that is from the hits back to the bowling one, and in this case, this empty one, which will in turn randomize the bowling animation and set up like this. Now we've got something that can scare beginners and people with a fear of spiders. So let's go ahead and test what we have to make sure everything works fine. All right. Now, once we get bold, you can see we have this kind of situation right here. That is, the game has ended, but we should show the special celebration of the bowler as well because we have the animation right here. Let's go ahead and use the same in our state machine. That is, after bowling, we can display the bowled animation, that is the celebration, and a very visual cue that the game has ended. And the condition here would be exit time of 100%. And then we have another issue right here, that is after the bowler bowls, you can see it goes back to its position, that is a step back without a animation. So here we can use the bowler return for the same like this, and also set the exit time to be 100%. So let the animation play at all. And after that, we can start bowling. So let's perform the same. The bowler bowls, we hit the ball, and after that, the bowler goes back. Kind of like a reset for another ball. So that's the state machine setup for our cricket game. It's time to look at some final touches I have added to make it more fun, like intro and outro messages and a way to restart the game if you get bold. I've set up the same by adding some dialog boxes, that is this right here. I go ahead and show the same at the start of the game when the state machine starts. And if I click on the screen, it goes away. That is a simple state that simply makes it invisible. And for the retry mechanism, I have this right here. That is after we get bold, we show the losing screen, that is this one right here. And if the retry button is clicked, I fire this retry event that in turn resets everything back to the normal state and removes the message, that is the dialog box, and we go back into the loop from this polar return. And the loop just keeps on going until you get bold again. Now, as is, the game will go on forever unless you get bold. To conclude the game, I have added a winning goal. If you get 6 perfect hits, you have won the game. And to implement that, I have added a sixes count. And to track the number of sixes, I have set up a new layer and created some animations and added a sixer label. That is this one right here. So we have this zero state where we have this out of the screen and the number set to zero. Essentially, this zero is clipped with a rectangle, and we have this long text that just gets scrolled up and down. So then we have this one state where we go ahead and bring this in the screen, increment the number, and fire a event. That is, we have this 6 1. I listen for the same in the state machine that is on this sixer event. That is, when there is a perfect hit, I trigger the same. And in our listeners, when we get this 6 1 event, I set the success count to 1. Similarly, I've gone ahead and implemented all the way up to 6, that is 6 perfect hits. And when that happens, we can show the winning screen in the main loop. That is, let's say we have got 5 perfect hits, then we get another one, and I can simply check that. That is, if we have success count as 6, we can show the winning screen. That is this one right here. So that's how I have implemented the success count in our cricket game. And that's actually it. Go play it yourself and try to get in 6 perfect hits. It was very fun developing the same from scratch. For more fun projects and general tutorials on Rive, consider subscribing the Motion Magic. And check out the full courses if you're getting started and want to learn how to build these kind of interactions yourself. That's it for today. See you in the next one.